All right, Joe, thank you so much for joining us here today. Joe, as a Fordham alumni, obviously a class of 71, there's so much we could talk about with you in terms of your incredible career, obviously in business, your success professionally, your alumni status here, being a boy from the Bronx, and your story. But I'll be honest with you, and just in the terms of sake of time, I'm so excited to have you with us today and spending a little time with us to talk about the incredible story of Coastal Carolina football. And I know for you, obviously, basically in your second career, your second life here as a football coach and your involvement down there at Coastal, this has got to be like your child, like your baby in terms of what you've really built, honestly, from scratch. And I've had the fortune of visiting you down there and seeing the facilities and seeing the campus, and what's been done there is magical. And it's all come to fruition here in this incredible football season where I believe Coastal was, even by the preseason coaches pool and the preseason ESPN pool, had you guys kind of lower in a division, lower in terms of projected rankings. And to be where you are right now as an unbeaten team, nationally ranked in the country in the teens, depending on which poll you're looking at, college game day showing up there on Saturday, you have to be like a proud dad watching your child like just take over the world. It's remarkable.
No, I appreciate all that, Ed. But by the way, I appreciate being on with you guys as well. And, my dream when I decided to go back to football, be a head football coach, would have been to be the Fordham coach. But timing wasn't right as far as all those things go. And I wound up at Coastal Carolina, and, I feel very much attached to the university, very much part of it, very, very proud in terms of what we've done. I'm also certainly proud of, and I recognize there are ups and downs, but I'm certainly proud to be part of Fordham as well. And I know it's a difficult time in New York with the virus going on and all the different things you've got. But, I commend your athletes for hanging in there, your coaches for hanging in there, and eventually this is going to get past us. It may get a little worse before it gets better. And, I hope you have your spring season with regard to football, but there's nothing we could do about that. So we've got to adapt and adjust as best we can. We got to recognize what's going on. In fact, the thought process, because I've shared this with, my players, and I've shared this with a lot of my loved ones, and sometimes when I give talks. So there's always a brighter side to something going on. If you look at things half full, there's nothing great about the virus, but it gives us more time that we've ever had in our life to be able to kind of think and maybe spend some time together. And I think it's been a great opportunity to be more self-reflective. Like who am I? Just using me as an example. Who am I as an individual? Who am I as a coach? Who am I as a business guy? Who am I as a father? Who am I as a friend? Who am I as a son? Whatever it might be with regard to that. I think for people to take some time, just think that through. That when our happiness often depends on decisions we make under stress, critical decisions, and we do a better job of making the right decision. We increase the probability of making the right decision when we really have a better idea and understanding of who we are. So to come out of this virus, when we do, and not know ourselves individually a little better than what we know ourselves today, that's an opportunity lost. So for whatever that's worth, I kind of want to share that. Now, you can cut me off anytime you want to, but with the introduction of what you talked about, we were picked last in the conference, and the year before we were picked last, and so where we are, we feel great about it. Would we have predicted we were ranked 14th in the country? Would we have predicted there'd be an ESPN game day? We would not have predicted that, but we also know that. We thought we could have been a little better a year ago. And we also knew we had our best team coming in. So we knew we weren't going to be last in the conference. We believed totally we were going to have a good enough record to go to a bowl game. And we believed all those things. And then as things started to click and, our guys showed tremendous leadership. You had mentioned before we went on air that, you went something like 3 months with your athletes at Fordham with nobody tested positive. Since October 4th, we've had on the football teams, about 120 guys on the football team since October 4th. We've not had one positive test.
Wow.
And so that says something about the protocol on campus within the athletic administration and the medical group. It says something, though, about the coaches. So this is part of what they've got to coach, because the players got to feel inspired to live up to this with regard to the discipline they have. And our guys have done that. So that's also part of where we are. But when I showed up in 2012, I was incredibly excited. We were also picked to be like, near the bottom of our conference at the time. And the year before, ranked 89th in the country. And we got off to a little bit of a tough start. We were 2-4. And then our first really big game that we won was against Liberty at homecoming. They were favored by a couple of touchdowns. We beat them like 3 or 4 touchdowns. That was a big deal. We were supposed to be playing Liberty this Saturday in game day. And from there on, we went undefeated the rest of the season, won the league, went to and so we became an elite FCS program. And because of that, we were invited to join the FBS. And it takes a little while to make that transition. So at our level, FCS level, as you know, we have 63 scholarships. At the FBS level, you get 85 scholarships. Well, it took us almost 3 years just to get to 82, 83 scholarships.
Yes.
So it's a tough transition in the beginning to be able to get there, but we got a little better each year. I recruited our head coach, Jamie Chadwell. He's one of the coaches in the country that had a winning record against me. And so I figured if I couldn't beat the guy, I may as well hire the guy. And that's kind of an interesting story unto itself. But he came in as my offensive coordinator, associate head coach. He filled in for me the year I took a medical sabbatical because I had a problem with my lungs, allergy related. And then when I stepped down after 25 seasons as a football coach, I turned that over to him. And I couldn't be prouder of him, the staff that he's got, and our guys. And 4 of the 5 classes I recruited, 3 of the 5 classes I coached, and so I know those guys well. And I just couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be prouder.
Coach, it's wonderful to hear your breakdown right there, and you obviously said a lot there in terms of the summary. And for us, Fordham Rams, our Ramily, not having football this season, not having athletics during this fall semester, being able to cheer for you and Coastal and have all of our alumni support you and your efforts down there and see the magical ride is incredible. And you talked about that jump from FCS to FBS. And it's funny because you kind of position the 3-4 years as being a long time. I think it's absolutely remarkable what's been accomplished here as now a nationally ranked program. This is the highest any Sun Belt football team has ever been ranked in the country in the history of that conference. I mean, it's truly remarkable what's going on here. And obviously leading up to Saturday and game day, and hopefully it is, obviously, I think it's against Liberty. And I know there's obviously the COVID challenges we're all dealing with. It's amazing to see, and I don't mean to tie back to your business background, but I've read your book on leadership. I've heard you give presentations and discussion points about leadership. To go from FCS to FBS in that 4-year stretch is almost like being an entrepreneur. It's almost like being a business owner and converting your business plan and model. You got to talk to me a little bit about that as a new athletic director in the A10 conference at Fordham, our beloved institution, and some of the things we're looking at in terms of building and changing and developing here. I'm blown away by that timeline and that business plan. I got to say it. I've seen your facilities. I know what you built there physically on that campus. I know what you've done here recruiting, and you talk about Coach Chadwell. We'll talk about him more. But that's a quick timeline, Coach. I think everybody would sign up for that 4-year stretch of what you just built right now.
I would agree with that, Ed. I think I'm not taking away in terms of the speed with which we got things done with regard to the timeline. It just takes you a while before you can even compete on an even level, just in terms of scholarships. So if everybody you're playing has got 20 or 15 or even 10 more scholarships than you do, that's actually a big deal. The other thing that happens too is because you go from FCS to FBS, you start to attract a kid that's a good player that might be very interested in Coastal, but he's not going to go anyplace other than FBS. So we now attract that kid. So what happens is, your older kids, I'm going back 4 years. So your older kids then start to graduate, and your young kids that come in actually usually are better players. So it takes that 2 to 3, 4 years time frame too to have an FBS level of athlete, in your program. And so it takes a little while to be able to get there. But certainly we're there now. We feel pretty good about that. One comment I want to make, so I may as well make. We just, before I got on air here, just a little while ago, we just had a press release. We announced that we're not going to play Liberty on Saturday. And we've been preparing for them, for a whole week. And that's a big rivalry for us. And again, on game day and national television, we're really excited about that. Plus, we're also nationally ranked. We're 14th in the country. I think they were 22nd and 23rd. They can't play because of COVID. So we anticipated that might be a possibility. And our athletic administration went out and figured this out. And we're going to play BYU. So this is a big deal now. So the number 14 team in the country.
It's getting bigger. It's getting bigger.
Coastal Carolina is playing BYU, number 8 in the country, also undefeated. So you got a top 10 team, you got a top 15 teams, you got 2 undefeated teams.
Wow.
Playing on game day. We're going to back it up to, I think, 5 o'clock kickoff, but that's pretty exciting. So that's a big deal for us. And now we got to get ready. We just did this morning, so we've been preparing for Liberty all week. And football coaches understand that. They had a bye last week, BYU. They have a bye this week. That's why they can play.
Right. So
I'm sure they practiced, but they've also had a nice break. And if I'm their coach and I thought there was a chance, I'm not playing anybody anyway. If I thought there was a chance that I might play Coastal Carolina, I would start preparing for them already, at least looking at the film. So I believe they probably have one full day at least, preparation in terms of getting ready for us. We just started to look at them this morning. So, but it'd be a great game. It'd be a great challenge for our guys. We're kind of looking forward to do that.
Wow. And the moment gets that much bigger.
Moment is bigger. Yeah, it is bigger. There's more going on. There's more at stake. There's more at risk. There's all those things. And, I know our guys. I assume that Jamie will. The worst thing we could do is get in too much of a game plan because we don't have enough time to kind of practice that game plan. So we've got to make sure that we're doing the things that we know we can do and do them as well as possible. And then we got to adapt and adjust and react as best we can. But Jamie's smart. The coach is smart. They'll get that figured out.
I love it. So the game day build up, national TV Saturday, BYU now is in there. Obviously the moment is there. You talk about Coach Chadwell. I've seen a lot of the culture and environment that you've built and established for the chance. Joe, BAM, I know was the term that was in place. I'd love you to speak a little bit to that in terms of the culture and environment, what that means, and kind of how that's been really a foundation for you all down there.
Well, Ed, the question you asked a few moments ago was, from a business perspective, how do you kind of approach this? How do you do this? And whether it's football or whether it's the business world, the reality is the principles of leadership is the same. And it depends on the people that you've got. And then it depends on the standard you set for those people to operate in. You've got to make sure you have a strategy that is sophisticated enough that can handle the different contingencies that pop up. You got to have a playbook that's sophisticated enough to be able to handle the different contingencies that you may face over the span of the season. But then you've got to take that strategy from a business perspective and you've got to simplify it enough where your employees can deliver on that. And you got to keep your priorities in perspective. So it's about, you don't have a business if you don't have your clients. So your clients, you got to make sure that you take care of your clients and your shareholders and recognize that you deliver value to each of those through your employees or your associates. So with regards to the football program, so you simplify it in the business world so you can execute. The football program, you're getting ready for a game. The biggest reason why people lose games is because of mistakes. Well, they make mistakes because it's a little bit too complex. What sounds good in up on the grease board is not as effective when you're trying to execute. So the game plans are not simplified enough. So to have success, you got to simplify your game plan so 11 guys can function at one without hesitation and know and understand what they're doing, and recognize also that this is about your players. This is about your players. It's not like our mission wasn't to necessarily win a championship, even though we always won championships. The mission was to put a team on the field that all Coastal Carolina is going to be proud of. So what does that really mean? Well, we know we're going to lose some games. We know that's certainly a possibility. But at the end of the day, that means you're never going to look at a film. Now, I can't say it's 100%, but I'd say there's 99%. You can't look at a film of Coastal Carolina over the last 8 years and see one person taking a snap off, no matter what the score is. So it's given 100% of the time. So that gets back then to your philosophy. And, the philosophy upon which we built, it's changed a little bit, but not too much. That when I was there, we had two things we emphasized as differentials in recruiting. One was we're the only football program in the country that didn't have any rules. Now, nobody really said, oh, come on. We did not have one rule, but we had a standard. That standard was the BAM thing. And the idea behind BAM, that BAM means be a man. So if you want to be cynical, the first thing you say, whoa, that's kind of sexist. Well, okay. Forget the acronym is really a leadership philosophy. Think of BAM as leadership philosophy. And frankly, in my very first head high school job, when I was 22 years old in Delaware, I had just left Fordham Prep where I was coaching as an assistant. This is written in our first playbook. And I said, our program's got to be more about just winning and losing. Got to be a little bit more about football. And it's about helping you become a man. So what's a man? Is a man some tough macho guy? No, a real man is somebody who stands on their own 2 feet, takes responsibility for themselves, always treats others with dignity, respect, and lives with the consequence reactions. That was the standard with which I have my family raised. And I've got 3 daughters. That's the way they were raised. It also became the standard, certainly the first time around as a football coach for 16 years. Then when I went to the business world, I moved into executive management and had people working for me. That was the standard. There wasn't, and I had females working for me as well. So then coming back to Coastal Carolina, I've got 125 guys, another 25 coaches, interns, analysts, et cetera, but they're all male. So be a man was a great acronym for us, but it's a leadership philosophy. And that leadership philosophy, the key to that is you can't use excuses. You can't make an excuse in terms of what's going on, because once you do, you subconsciously let yourself off the hook. How many times have you heard, well, the coach doesn't really like me. You know what? The teacher doesn't like me. The teacher doesn't like football players. The weather really stinks. It was so cold today, I couldn't hold on to the ball. It was raining, it was wet. I had a problem. By the way, I got a problem with my girlfriend, so my mind's not where it's supposed to be. My parents don't understand me, so these are all excuses. Well, they happen in the business world all the time. Oh, well, the administration is not being cooperative enough. There's too much. There's too much compliance about what's going on. The Federal Reserve should be a little bit more accommodative than what they are. There's too much regulation. There's always, every time you say that, though, it's an excuse. Now, one simple little thing that I think that the Fordham people certainly get is that there can always be a bad call during the span of a game, but our coaches were never allowed to yell at the referees. And the reason for that is because, first, the coach is responsible for his position. We don't have penalties. We don't want penalties. We used to talk about that all the time. Now, the player is responsible for himself, but the coach is responsible for that as well. If the coach is yelling at the official in the game because it was a bad call, first, our players see that. So what you do, you subconsciously let yourself off the hook every time you make an excuse. So you still act like, you take responsibility. That's what everybody says. But 90% of the world does not do that. And that's what's given us a competitive advantage for me in the business world, first time around as coach, certainly this time, and that there are no excuses. Then the other thing we did was we recognized that, and every college will say this, but not every college really means this. And then I asked, well, what does the football staff do specifically to be able to enhance this? And that is, I think our job is to lay a foundation upon which our players can build a life, once football's over, whether that's at the end of high school, they get injured their freshman year, at the end of the college career, at the end of their pro career. What's that? And so we're the only program in the country. I mean, no one in the country ever did this. We do it. I give up 30 minutes of practice a week. I'm going to repeat that. 30 minutes, but we give up 30 minutes of practice. And we have a team meeting. Usually I run it. We talk about things that are going on in the world and things that I think are really important in the world that have nothing to do with football. Now, they may have everything to do with BAM, but have nothing to do with football. So, for example, I think the biggest threat in the globe today is terrorism. So I thought that was critical for our guys to understand. What are the roots? How did it begin? What's the ideology, which is religious, behind it? How do they recruit? How do they train? How do they fund themselves? All those things. My football team knew what ISIS stands for. My guess is that 95% of the students in a country, I don't care what level, Harvard, I don't care, Fordham, I don't care, do not know what ISIS stands for. My football team did. So if that's that critical, well, then how do you defend ourselves from that? Well, we did it through the military. So we spent time talking about the value of the military, and there are guys the same age as my guys that putting their lives on the line. Why? So we can play college football? So we can live in freedom. So number one, let's appreciate that sacrifice. And number two, with those freedoms come responsibility. You go right back to BAM. Take responsibility for yourself. Well, if that's the case, that's so important. We can only pray that our military and political leaders have the guts and the courage to do what they believe is the right thing for our national security and not worry about whether or not they're going to get promoted or reelected, whatever it might be. So what role do we have? Well, we live in a democracy. In 2016, in 145 years of college football, the only football program at any level in the history of college football whose entire team voted on election day was Coastal Carolina. We did that in November 2016. Now, this year, the NCAA said, well, you got to give your players off so they can vote. And there's 40 or 50 football programs for sure. They said, oh, we're doing all this. Nobody did it up until we did in 2016. Yeah. So those are just kind of examples in terms of what we do, why we do it. And that's how we differentiate ourselves from others too. But that's also the way we function, the way we operate. So the land of no excuses, whether it's the business world, whether it's your family life, whether it's a personal life, whether it's football. That becomes very, very critical. So it begins with that as a philosophy.
Yes.
And then you got to execute that.
Coach, I love it. I could listen to this all day. I know you need to prepare now for BYU and shift gears for the.
Well, I'm not preparing for BYU, but the guys are preparing for BYU.
I got a feeling you're going to keep an eye on things, and obviously exciting to get everybody in the Chance family down there ready for Saturday. There's a lot to be excited about, from I'm sure your alumni base to the local community to everyone on campus. We thank you so very much for your time. I know the Fordham family, all the Fordham alums here in New York City and the tri-state area are going to be pulling for you on Saturday. I got to say, I'm super excited for you. I know we all are, and wish you nothing but the best and best of luck.
I very much appreciate that. One quick story, Ed, that is, when Moorhead was coaching at Fordham and you were doing so well, and we were doing well, and it was once, twice that you went to the playoffs, and I was approached a couple of times, but what do you think about playing Fordham? And I said, I don't want to play Fordham. I don't want to play. I'm not worried about what's going to happen in the game. I just don't want to play Fordham. It'd be too emotional for me. I don't want to go through that anxiety. I don't want to look at the jerseys and the uniforms. I don't want to be able to do that. So it's an honor for me again. I wish you all the best of luck, and especially through the COVID. And again, let's take advantage of the time that we do have now, but eventually it's all going to be behind us. So Ed, I thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Joe, thank you for helping out with the communication. Go Fordham, go Coastal.